Let me ask you something you probably haven't said out loud. Not to your pastor, not to your spouse, not even to yourself in the mirror. Is your life actually changing, or are you just getting better at looking like it is? Because there's a version of faith that looks devoted from the outside and stays completely untouched on the inside. And there's another kind, the kind that gets under your skin, the kind that rearranges you from the root up. Jesus said in John 15 that, apart from him, you can do nothing, not little, nothing. That means if your life isn't actually moving, shifting, being remade, something is off. So today, we're talking about 5 things. 5 things that start happening the moment you stop playing at faith and start actually walking in it. Some of these will comfort you. Some of these will confront you. But by the end, you'll know exactly where you stand. 1. Your timeline stops making sense to everyone but you. When you're on God's path, your life stops following the schedule everyone else expects. The job you were supposed to have by now doesn't come. The relationship everyone assumed was next doesn't happen. The plan you built in your head quietly falls apart, and nobody around you can explain why. That's because they're measuring your life by a calendar. God is measuring it by a purpose. Ecclesiastes 3 says, "There is a time for every purpose under heaven, not your time, a time, his time." And when you're truly walking with him, you start trading your urgency for his timing, even when it costs you every ounce of comfort you had left. People will ask why you're still waiting, why you haven't moved yet, why the door hasn't opened. You won't always have an answer, but you'll have a peace that doesn't need one. Delay is not denial. A closed door is not a dead promise. It might just mean you're not late, you're early for something better. If your timeline looks nothing like you planned, that's not proof you're behind. That might be proof you're finally being led instead of leading yourself. 2. You start obeying before you understand. This is where real faith separates itself from performance. Most people want God to explain everything before they move. They want the reason before the obedience, the blueprint before the step. But that's not how this works. Abraham left his home without knowing where he was going. Noah built an ark before a single cloud appeared. Hebrews 11 says faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, not things explained, not things proven, not seen. When you're on God's path, you begin noticing something different in yourself. You obey the nudge before you fully understand the reason. You give when it doesn't add up. You forgive before it feels earned. You walk away from something comfortable because your spirit won't let you settle there anymore, even though your mind can't justify it yet. That's not foolishness. That's faith doing exactly what it was designed to do. The world calls it reckless. Heaven calls it trust. And here's the part nobody tells you. Understanding usually comes after obedience, not before it. If you're moving before you have it all figured out, you're not behind on faith. You're finally living it. 3. Your prayers start changing shape. Early faith is usually loaded with requests. Give me this. Fix that. Change them. Change my situation. There's nothing wrong with that. God welcomes it. But something shifts the longer you actually walk with him. Your prayers stop being a list and start becoming a conversation. Romans 8:26 says the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. That means there's a level of prayer that isn't even about finding the right words anymore. It's presence. It's surrender. It's sitting in silence and knowing you're heard even when you don't say much at all. When you're on God's path, you start praying less for escape and more for alignment. Less, get me out of this, and more, make me like you in this. You begin asking for character instead of comfort, wisdom instead of shortcuts. His will, even when his will costs you something you wanted to keep. That kind of prayer isn't taught. It's grown. It comes from time spent, not information gathered. If your prayers look less like demands and more like devotion lately, that's not a loss of passion. That's the maturing of it. The first 3 things happen mostly on the inside. Quiet shifts in how you wait, how you obey, how you talk to God. But the next 2 show up on the outside, in your relationships, in your daily life, in the way people can actually see the difference in you, whether you point it out or not. 4. You start carrying people instead of competing with them. There's a version of faith that's still secretly about you, your growth, your blessing, your breakthrough. And there's a deeper version that starts noticing the people around you. When you're truly on God's path, something in you stops keeping score. You stop measuring your progress against someone else's. You stop resenting the friend who got the promotion, the marriage, the answered prayer you're still waiting on. Galatians 6:2 says to carry each other's burdens, and in this way you fulfill the law of Christ. Carry, not compare, not compete. Carry. That means you find yourself celebrating someone else's blessing like it's your own, because in the kingdom, it kind of is. You begin praying for people who never prayed for you. You simply show up for people who can't do anything for you in return. That's not a weakness. The world calls that a soft target. Heaven calls it maturity. Because a heart that's still competing hasn't fully surrendered yet, but a heart that's learned to carry others has started looking a lot more like Jesus. If you've caught yourself rooting for people instead of resenting them, don't brush past that. That's growth you didn't manufacture. That's growth God produced. 5. You stop needing an audience to stay faithful. This is the one that separates real from performed. Early in faith, a lot of us need to be seen doing the right thing. We need someone to notice the sacrifice, the discipline, the obedience. But something changes when you're actually walking with God instead of walking for applause. Matthew 6:6 says to go into your room, close the door, and pray to your God who is unseen. Unseen. Not live-streamed, not posted. Unseen. When you're on God's path, your faithfulness stops depending on who's watching. You give when no one will ever know you gave. You stay obedient in the room nobody films. You keep your word in the moment nobody would catch you breaking it. That's not because you stopped caring. It's because your audience changed. You're not performing for people anymore. You're living for an audience of one. And once that shift happens, something interesting occurs. The praise of people begins to feel smaller, and the presence of God starts feeling like enough. You've heard all 5, and if you're honest, at least one of them just described something happening in your life right now. Maybe it's the timeline that makes no sense. Maybe it's the obedience that came before the understanding. Maybe it's the prayers that don't sound like demands anymore. Maybe it's the shift from comparison to carrying. Maybe it's the quiet faithfulness nobody claps for. Whichever one it is, hear this. None of these things happen by accident. They happen because something real is taking root. God isn't just watching your life from a distance. He's shaping it, one unseen moment at a time. So here's the question. Which of these 5 is happening in you right now? Say it in the comments, not for anyone else, for yourself. Because naming it is how you start walking in it on purpose. Send this to someone who needs to know their life isn't falling apart, it's falling into place. And if you're looking for biblical encouragement that helps you grow in faith every week, subscribe to Bible Revive and join us on this journey. Until next time, may God bless you.